All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning us for another week of the Remote No Pressure Podcast. I'm absolutely ecstatic about today, about what's going on in the big news. If you were on the mailing list, you know some of it, but this is even bigger news, okay? Here's the deal. Today is episode number 50. So what I did is, this is kind of a best of, not really a best of, but I took some clips of some of our older episodes over the past 50 and put them all into one episode. Definitely not the best, and I did best of, but it's just, how can you pick the best? Every episode, every guest has been unbelievably amazing, but I'm like, the show can't be 5 hours long. So I just picked some clips that really meant a lot to me from some people that I really love. I love everybody, actually, but you know what I mean. So here's the deal. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through, and it's just a clip show. I'm very excited about that. That's some of the big news. Here's the other big news, okay? As most of you know, we do not have sponsors on this show as of right now, and that has been intentional, okay? Also, I'm not going to tell you to go donate money on some Patreon account or blah, blah. I just don't like that, okay? That's just not the way we roll. So the big news is this, all right? We have partnered up with Deli Fresh Design. And I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but they were actually on our show. Ross White, actually. Deli Fresh Design. And he creates this handmade sling pack that is just unbelievable. Okay, this is not something you can get on Amazon Prime. Okay, this is handmade, all in America. Unbelievable. I've fished with them. I've bought one. Didn't get a free one. I bought it because I loved it. I've got 3 of them, actually. Well, we have partnered up with him, and we are doing a joint effort, and we have made an official remote, no pressure sling pack. If you go to our website, remotenopressure.com, you can order one. Now, here's the deal. We had Jake Knoth, the artist, draw us up a logo. The logo is sweet. It goes on the front of the Deli Fresh Design sling pack. Now, this is not a logo that will go on forever. This logo is specifically designed just for this bag. And here's the deal. We're only making 100 bags. We're not going to make any more than that. So once we sell 100 bags, you can no longer buy the bag. The logo, the design of the logo will be completely retired. It's only for this bag. You will not see this logo on hats or anything else. And this is the first one. So it's so exciting to be a part of this. I'm so excited because we are actually helping someone really take their business and help them. We are helping Deli Fresh Design. We're so excited about what they're doing that we wanted to partner up with them. So if you go to remotenopressure.com, you're going to see 2 bags. We have one in digital camo and another one in this sweet, sweet maroon. But we're only doing 100. So when you order them, they will be handmade with the Remote No Pressure logo, the limited edition, right? After we sell 100, we will no longer sell the bags. After we sell 100, you will never see that logo again. So if you purchase this, you will have something that's part of Remote No Pressure history. I'm so excited about it. I'm excited because, and when you order it and it gets shipped, it's not going to get there overnight, okay? It's going to take, Ross said, like 7 to 10 days to get to you because he hand makes these things in Denver, Colorado. I'm so excited that we can help Ross. I really believe in what he's doing, and his pack is just unbelievable. Like, I fit all I need to go fishing, and there's pictures on our website. You can take a look at it. So jump on board. This week, this episode, I am so excited because this is episode number 50. I can't believe it. You know, we started out, I started this thing out with a dream, and I would just email people on LinkedIn until someone would say yes. And and now I don't have to reach out as hard because people are so gracious and willing to come to me. And I just love it. It's just amazing, everything that's happened. The first clip is from Dave McCoy's episode. And he shares a story that it's really what we're all about here. We truly believe at the Remote No Pressure Podcast that fly fishing can change lives. We believe that from the bottom of our heart. and he's going to talk to us about how he discovered that it's not just the fish we catch, but it's in the process we go through to catch the fish. Guys, welcome. I'm so excited to say this. I'm so pumped. Welcome to the podcast. Number 50. Welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire.
As we get older, there's that you start to have perspective. And I think even result oriented people will, on occasion, and frequently actually, move away from that result and move more into the process. And for my company, we are 100% about the process. Um, I just sort of assume that every single person that we're going to guide, or that comes into the store, or that we talk to on the phone, or that travels internationally with us, is going to be somebody that embraces this sport for the rest of their life and hands it down to people in their family when the door opens to do so. I just treat every single person I meet with that in mind. Um, and I know that that's not everybody. And I could go down a road of my opinions on that I won't go down. But where you came from and why you got into it, I tell people this all the time. There's been so many presidents of the United States that fly fish, and the reason for that is because it requires so much attention to everything going on around you. It's an observant based sport, um, that it appeals to them because they've got the worst frickin' job in the world, and they'll do anything to take their mind off of it for a couple of hours.
Right.
So if that's what draws people out, is to take their mind off of work, so be it. And that's awesome if it's therapeutic and spiritual in that way. But for those that really do it because they love it, and eventually even those people do end up loving it, um, man, it's just such a cool experience, and it puts you out in some of the most wonderfully beautiful places on the planet.
Well, let's talk about your career, Dave, in particular. If we take, from Telluride to Seattle to where you are right now, have you? It sounds to me and that you have evolved from results to being more process oriented, or have you always been process oriented? Would you say?
No, I would be absolutely stand here with the longest nose in the world if I told you I was always process oriented.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can give credit to a client of mine when I was guiding on the Gunnison on the Black Canyon, that we're sitting there, it's salmon fly hatch and it's gangbusters. You're having to talk with your teeth closed because huge salmon flies are crawling up your face and trying to climb in your mouth, and they're it's exactly the experience that somebody pays the money to try to hit on the head, and this guy just nailed it. I mean, it was the most perfect timing to be on that river for the salmon fly. And there's fish rising, and this guy's like, he's an okay angler, but he's like, I'm like, hit the wall, get it on the wall, see that splash, come on, get it over there. No, 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 back up here, about 2 feet to the right, it's got to be on the wall. And he turns and he looks at me for a second, and I'm rowing my ass off to try to keep the boat in place. And he reels up and puts his fly on his rod, and he goes, "Hey, will you hand me a beer there really quick, Dave?" And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, "Man, go pull over here for a sec." And I'm like, all right. So I row over, and I try to row as far upriver as I can so that we can hit that wall again. I'm all about results for this guy right now, right? And he opens his beer and he leans back on that front seat, kicks his feet up, and he's like, "Wow." He's like, have you ever looked at that little canyon that kind of creeps back into the wall of the back there? And have you ever hiked up there? Have you ever wondered what's up there? And I look up there and I'm like, "No, never wondered." Because you got to settle down, Dave. He's like, "I want to be able to look up and enjoy this place that I'm fishing, maybe more than the fish I'm trying to catch." He's like, "Don't worry about me. I'm having a great time, and I'm going to take it at my pace." He's like, "You just row the boat and and help me become a better angler and get us to camp on time for dinner. And he's like, let's just take a breath and enjoy this. Enjoy this. It's gorgeous. This is stunning. And something clicked in my head there. And I spent the next 3 days guiding him, and we had conversations about, he was in his 50s, and he talked about his kids and how of the three, one of them had really latched on to fly fishing as well, and that those are some of the greatest moments is when he's out there with his son and watching his son fly fish, and he's just kind of going through the motions because he's just enjoying that time and in that place with his son. And I want to say that really was kind of a beginning of the turning of the ship for me with regards to what was really important about the sport. He hardly caught any fish that trip. And at the end of the trip, he gave me a hug and was just like, look, that was fantastic once we got over that initial hiccup. He goes, always keep that in mind. Even when people are driven for the result, he's like, pull the reins back, slow them down, and help them do what I did for you. And epiphany almost.
Wow.
And from there on, it totally changed. And the rest of my years guiding on the Gunnison, I really tried to keep that in mind.
That was a great story. And I remember when Dave told me that night, I could not go to sleep. I was so pumped after that episode. And that's not even that's just some of the episodes. I recommend you going back and listen to that episode because all the things that Dave said were so rich, and they were so much about what we believe. And it was when I was just kind of starting out on the podcast, and I remember being so encouraged by some of the things that Dave said to me and encouraged me that were off of the record. It was awesome. I just want to say thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. So on to the next clip. The next clip we have, there's been a lot of people who've referred guests and referred people to me and gave me some great ideas. And Katie Webster is one of them as well. And she's going to talk about in this clip from her episode about how she also discovered why it's all about the process. It's not just catching the fish, but it's everything about fly fishing that's healing. Let's take a listen to the clip.
I just think getting into that place where the process is its own reward. When you enjoy the little stuff, like you enjoy looking at bugs and picking out flies and shooting the shit in fly shops and standing around a lot, then yeah, fly fishing is for you, for sure.
Now, let me ask you this question. I mean, you started fishing when you were very young.
Yep.
Is there a particular moment or the question I'm trying to ask, Katie, is when did you realize that it wasn't about the numbers, that it was about the process?
Man, I'm trying to think of So I had maybe the crappiest fishing trip ever. Summer of 2014. And I don't know, for some reason I decided to plan a week in the Yellowstone backcountry for right after my best friend got married. And so at 3:00 in the morning as I'm leaving this wedding, I'm like, oh man, this is not a good idea. I have to get on a flight in 4 hours. We packed to Bozeman, packed up my stuff. Also, I don't recommend packing for a fishing trip while you're brutally hungover.
You will forget something.
Oh, like your rod? Yeah. So, my pre-wedding self was just like, oh, it's going to be such a great way to decompress in this wedding. And then after the wedding, I was just kind of in the Slough Creek parking lot, kill me now. And so I'm with a friend of mine, and we're cruising along. And everybody we pass coming out of Slough Creek, hey, what are they eating up there? What are they eating up there? Mormon crickets, Mormon crickets, Mormon crickets. And I'm just like, hell, the Mormon crickets. I'm looking around, there are these huge crickets. The size bigger than $50. They're just and they fall over. They're super clumsy. It was really funny. So I'm looking at my friend who's a fishing guide. I'm like, do we have any Mormon crickets? And he gives me this look, and I'm like, we don't have Mormon crickets, do we? And he was just like, you forgot your rod. I'm like, you're a fishing guide. Come on. So we got back there, And like, I mean, I just started asking people because I thought it was funny. So I mean, we passed this guy in a Patagonia truck. I was like, hey man, any luck? Oh, killed him. I'm like, what are they on? He's like, Mormon crickets. I'm like, interesting. So by the time, and then we're being mauled by mosquitoes. Like we can't even stop because we're getting like just brutalized by mosquitoes. And we get there, we set up our camp. It's like starting to get dark. We're barely speaking at this point. And we get down to the river and there's just PMDs everywhere, just mayflies everywhere. So we were just like, all right, cool. Like we'll catch a bunch of fish on mayflies. It'll be great. Next day comes around and I was just like, this is one of those like type 2 fun. Like it's fun later. It was not fun at the time. I was like, we're cruising along and I see this cutthroat. And I don't know if you've ever been fished in Yellowstone, but like really steep cut banks and just big 20-inch bait fishing for cutties. Like so much fun if you have the right fly. Mm-hmm. So I'm like I'm just like trying to get anything to come up and we can't get anything to come up. And I see this one fish and he's got these little scars on his back. And I was just like, I called him Scarfish and I was just like, I'm going to get this guy. And I can't get him to come up. And so then my friend's like, well, let me catch him. I'm like, okay, you catch him. I'm going up here. I come back like 20 minutes later. My buddy's got a shit-eating grin on his face and a fish in the net. And I come out, I'm like, holy shit, you catch him? He's like, no, I didn't catch him, but I did catch this. Pulls it out. There's 2 flies hanging out of this fish's mouth. One is the hopper that my friend caught him on. The other is a Mormon cricket that somebody broke off in this fish's mouth. So I get this Mormon cricket. And I'm just like, this is a gift from the gods. I'm going for it. I'm like stalking the fish. I'm still getting mauled by mosquitoes. It's threatening to rain. I'm kind of pissed at my buddy. Like I'm out of snacks. I'm just kind of like hangry and annoyed, but I'm like, I'm going to catch this fish. And so I finally find him, my Scarfish, and he's like cruising along. I throw the Mormon cricket out there. He like sees it. He kind of comes up maybe like 8 inches and stops. And I'm like, all right. So like wait for him to go past it. I pull it back, wait for him to turn around, throw it again. He sees it. He turns. He's coming for it. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to catch this fish. This is amazing. Out of nowhere, the smallest trout I've ever seen in my entire life comes out from like behind the bank, like goes to like shoulder this fish out of the way. And I'm just like, are you kidding? Like, where did this little crapper come from? And he literally like the big like Scarfish turns and leaves. And this little teeny shit is like coming for my fly. And then right as he's about to eat it, an actual Mormon cricket falls off the bank into the water. And he turns on the thing, eats the real one and disappears. And I just was like, are you freaking kidding me? And it's like lightning and raining, and I'm just like, Mormon crickets, what the shit is happening? And my buddy's just like, you want to keep fishing? I'm like, how much whiskey do we have? And he's like, I think we have enough. And I was like, F it, we are out of here. And it was just like, it was one of those moments where I had so many moments on that trip that weren't about catching fish that were just so freaking funny. And if I'd caught that fish, like, sure, I could just be like, oh, and then we found this fly and, I caught the fish of my dreams. And like, that's a great little fairy tale. But the fact that not only did did my friend catch a fish that had the fly that we needed in its mouth, and then I found the fish that I wanted and I got him to come for the fly. And then another fish tried to take it and then a real fly. And I mean, I'm just like, you can't make this shit up. Like, and it's so fun. Like that to me is like kind of the best. So, it's not about the catching. That's not the fun part of fishing. Everything else that happens, like all the stupid crap in the boats and like just the dumb stuff that happens sitting around the campfire at night, like those are the things that make fishing super fun for me.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. Thank you for spending some time with us and encouraging us. And I just want to say there's been so many guests that she has referred onto the podcast, and some of them, like Katie Kahn, for instance, who was an outstanding guest. And I didn't include any of Katie Kahn's interview because it's so fresh and so new. But I recommend you going back and listen to her story and how she survived cancer, and what she did and how fly fishing has helped her. Our next episode begins a series of clips on healing. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, we truly believe that fly fishing has the power to change the world. we had on our podcast Mr. Ken Morrow, who actually wrote the book for Project Healing Waters. Unbelievable guy. You know, there's several people that I really didn't know who they were, you know. And then when I've spoken to them, you know, you read people's bios, you get their pictures, and you create this like idea of who they are. And I must say, Ken Morrow is a man of such depth, and the way he talks is so patient, and you can tell that his heart is so pure and so good toward helping these soldiers. And so let's get started. Let's take a listen to Ken's clip, and about how he wrote the book from Project Healing Waters.
Generally speaking, medical rehab doesn't address the psychosocial rehabilitation. It only addresses the physical side of rehabilitation. I'll give you an example that I used in the book. I actually broke my left thumb really badly when I was a teenager. I was playing sports and it basically destroyed the base knuckle in my thumb. And of course, you know, the doctor says, well, you know, squeeze a tennis ball 500 times a day. Well, I can do that, and I'm a more persistent and, you know, stubborn kind of person than most, but there was no way I was going to squeeze that tennis ball enough to get back to where I could open jars again and things like that. It literally took more than a decade for me to get to where I could open a jar.
Wow.
But what we found is that they're using what is clinically called outdoor experiential therapy, of which therapeutic fly fishing is just one modality. What we found was that there were ways to kind of trick people into leaning it forward into life again, and that they could and what I mean by that is we just taught them that they could still have fun.
Sure.
And so that's where the recreation therapy comes from. There's a guy, and he's this is kind of a well-known quote in fly fishing circles, but there's this old guy named John Bouchon. And he ended up being the first Baron of Tweedsmuir and the Prime Minister of Canada, but he was just the son of a, you know, Scottish minister, you know, very modest family background. He was intelligent, and he suffered a severe injury when he was a child, and his parents sent him to his grandparents' home in the country in the south of Scotland. They were sheep farmers. And he eventually recovered, and he spent all of his holiday time with his grandparents in the south of Scotland. He eventually graduated from school, and like many young men in his era that just finished their education, went off to fight in the Boer Wars, and then stayed in the military through World War I, and came back just a complete wreck. And I mean psychologically and emotionally, and he went back to his grandparents' place in Scotland. It was the only thing he could think of to do. And he said the meadows and the forests and the seas have always been my best medicine. And so he went back there, straightened himself out over several years. He was a great friend of Teddy Roosevelt's. And I'm sure you know about Teddy Roosevelt's outdoor adventures and stuff all over, you know, the place. But that was his primary outdoors adventure companion, was John Bouchon for many, many, many years, and eventually he became the Prime Minister of Canada. John Bouchon said that the magic of fishing is that, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit, but is that it is the quest for both the elusive and the attainable, and a perpetual series of occasion for hope.
Wow.
Well, I'll ask you, what is depression?
We'll say
The
it's just
absence of hope.
oh, okay. Sure.
You know, I mean, that's why people get so depressed they can't get out of bed.
Mm.
You know, that's why people give up on everything, and it's just because they just don't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm.
And so, one of the things that I discovered very quickly when I started working with some of these wounded troops that were coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan was that I heard several of them say it. They said, when I hooked into that first fish, or when I landed that first fish, it was like I was hit by a lightning bolt, and everything in my life changed.
Wow.
And so I started sitting down with them and talking to them about that and saying, what is it? What changed? What changed? I figured out I could have fun again.
Wow.
See, they're all sitting in these rehab units in these hospitals,
Yep.
squeezing the tennis ball,
Yeah.
bending their legs, walking, between the poles, holding on to them, all that kind of stuff in a clinical, in a rehab clinic. And they're getting poked and they're getting prodded, and somebody's coming in and waking them up in the middle of the night to take their temperature and their blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes on for months and months, and they have dozens and dozens of surgeries and all this stuff, and nobody ever bothered to address their most basic fundamental fear, which was that this was what life was going to be like from now on. It's going to be this living hell.
Wow.
And so we'd take them out of that hospital and take them fishing.
Mm.
And they catch a fish, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I can have fun again.
Right.
And now they go back to that rehab clinic and they start leaning into the rehab work because they can see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow.
And so that's where recreational therapy really plays a key role. And obviously, while a guy is still laying hooked up to a bunch of machines and all that kind of stuff, you can't do much of that kind of thing. But when they get to the point where they're ambulatory and they're moving around the hospital and they're going to clinic appointments and they're going down to that rehab clinic and they're exercising every day and that kind of stuff, then you can start to do some of that sort of stuff. And really, if you think about it, what John Bouchon was saying is that it's the pursuit of the elusive but attainable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, between you and me and the fence post, catching a fish really isn't all that difficult. But there's a mystery to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think back to the first time anybody ever took you fishing, like if you were like me, it was my grandpa, and he took some sliver of something gross or a piece of corn or whatever and put it on a hook below a bobber, and you flung it out there in the water, and he said, now watch that bobber, and if it moves, you lift up that rod and you'll catch a fish.
Right.
And you're like, okay, so you throw it out there and you kind of watch the bobber, and you're kind of having trouble struggling watching the bobber, you get bored, and then all of a sudden it moves. and you lift the rod tip up, and lo and behold, there's something wiggling on the other end and pulling the other way. And here's the real magic of this, okay? Because what is fishing but the repetition of that cycle over and over and over and over again?
Mm.
Okay? So what you have done immediately is you've started reprogramming the depressed brain to hope again, to expect a positive outcome.
Wow.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it literally rewires the synapses of the brain and starts reconditioning it. The more fish you can get them to catch, the better. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of refined this down to, and this is what I talk about in the book. I'm like, cheat, go stock a pond with like 500 bluegill.
Yeah.
And take 5 or 6 guys out in wheelchairs and sit them on the edge of the pond and just let those guys wear those bluegill out.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
because the more they catch those fish, every time they're casting it out there, they're hoping that it's going to move, and that if they just lift that rod up, they're going to catch a fish. Now, of course, every once in a while you miss one and all that stuff, but the point is you're redoing that over and over and over again, and whether they realize it or not, it's power of positive thinking. Okay, they're doing something, expecting a positive outcome. That outcome gets rewarded. Repeat. Okay, and that literally, if you know, there's a whole field of psychology called cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what this is all about, and it's one of the most effective forms of therapy for treating post-traumatic stress disorder. By the way,
Wow.
I don't mean the fishing, although it is, but I mean the whole field of cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's exactly what it's all about: is reprogramming the brain out of this cycle of depression and this cycle of malaise, and reprogramming it in ways to expect positive outcomes. Because when people have an expectation of positive outcome that is constantly being reinforced, then they start trying harder and harder and harder. And so your outcomes from rehabilitation therapy improve dramatically.
Wow. Wow. That was just like, it's just so good. It's so good. It's everything we're about here at the Remote No Pressure podcast. There's something about it. There's something about fly fishing that is beyond just casting, beyond just hooking a fish. There's something therapeutic behind it. Our next guest was amazing as well. All of our guests have been amazing, but I remember Adam Beam from Project Healing Waters here in Battle Creek, Michigan. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's over in Battle Creek, and how he shared his story, and how he was struggling with alcohol. He was struggling with PTSD, and it was fly fishing that saved his life. And he's going to tell another story in this clip about someone else whose lives have been changed. And maybe that's you. I don't know. Maybe you're struggling with something. Maybe you're a veteran. Maybe you're dealing with an abusive relationship, or you're fighting a battle with cancer. I just want to encourage you to reach out. You feel free to reach out to me at jefft@remotenopressure.com. And I know any of these guests, if you reached out to them, they want to help you as well. And Adam Beam is no exception. Unbelievable veteran. And he's going to talk to us a little bit in this clip about how Project Healing Waters and fly fishing saved his life.
And let me ask you this question. And how did you end up going to Project Healing Waters?
I ended up in Project Healing Waters program. Was actually a couple different avenues. I'm involved in community task force, and in that task force, there's a gentleman by the name of Paul Jakubiak. Here in Michigan, we know him as Uncle Jake. And he was talking about, after the meeting was over, he was talking about, yeah, I've got another fly tying class going on. I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah, but we do the rod building and all this other crazy stuff. And I said, I'd really be interested. Well, I started tying flies with Paul, and I ended up getting in trouble, drinking and driving. And I wound up through Project Healing Waters to basically the court system. I had to go and get my PTSD evaluation done, and through the VA. And at the VA, the lady that was doing my physical said, well, what things do you like to do? And I said, well, basically anything outdoors, I'm in. She said, well, my friend Tim May runs a program called Project Healing Waters, so you should go check it out. I said, what's it all about, And she said, here's a pamphlet. I know they go on fishing trips and stuff like that. And I started going through the pamphlet, and I was like, this is fly fishing. This is sweet. Like, I'm totally there. So my dad's a disabled vet as well. He's a Vietnam vet. And so my dad and I went to the meeting, and I haven't looked back. It's been it really did pull me out of a really dark spot that I was in. I wasn't in the best place in my life, but it's just one of those things that has saved so many different people and veterans, more specifically. We have one veteran I know of off the top of my head that's still participating in Project Healing Waters, and he was basically at his wit's end. Just, what I do, where do I go? He felt very isolated. He really didn't get out of his house. Couldn't, I wouldn't say not function, but I mean, he was in a rough spot. That's just the easiest way to put it. He was in a really rough spot. Didn't have any wheels. Couldn't work because of his disability rating, and he came to us via another Project Healing Waters program in a different state, and we said, "Hey, listen, why don't you come on out? We're same group of guys, friends you haven't met yet. Just get on out here." And he came, and as soon as he walked through the door and sat down and started tying a fly, and realized that, hey, this is all about camaraderie. This has nothing to do about my therapy. This is just veterans being veterans in a veteran setting. Lights turned back on, different dude. Now he's one of our volunteers. So it's a pretty dramatic change when you see someone come in a rough spot, and then 2 years later, here they are, like, hey, I want to volunteer. Let's do this, let's do that. I got a really good idea about this. Why don't we do that?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you everyone who's been on the podcast. It's just crazy. The next guest, the next clip, these are just some episodes you're just going through that have been amazing. Brian Kosminski, a fly fishing guide up in northern Michigan. He's going to talk a little bit in this clip about how fly fishing helped him recover from alcoholism. And now he's a phenomenal guide. And I met him in person. There's a few of my guests that I've actually met in person, and he's one of them. And I must say, he's just a great guy, and he's so awesome. Like, shares constantly sharing our podcast, our episodes, and just so encouraging. And his story is just phenomenal as well. So let's check it out.
This is kind of weird because it's all interweaved, but I quit drinking 16 years ago, and a lot of people think that I bring that out too easily and too forward. But at the same time, I replaced my addiction of alcohol with fly fishing, because I think we all get introduced to fly fishing around 9 or 10 years old, or fishing in general. We grow up, we fish for a while, obviously, and we get hooked on it. And then we go off to college, and then we learn about girls and beer and bars, and we do that whole thing. And then some mid-20s, late 20s sometime, we all realize that we're missing something. And for me, it hit me when I was 30, and I couldn't figure out what the missing puzzle piece was. And it was, what really made me happy was being on the river and fly fishing. And it didn't matter where, it didn't matter how much we were catching, but it just mattered that I was on the river and enjoying nature, and that was my serenity. So I substituted my addiction with alcohol with fly fishing, and I jumped into it all the way.
Wow. And how many years did you say it's been since you've
16? And I only say that just because there's a lot of people out there that there's a few guys that are in the program, and we know each other, who we are, and we kind of like give each other the secret handshake and the nod, and we like to be on the river and hang out together because there's a certain camaraderie involved with that. And it's not every guide or everybody who's on the river is sitting around the campfire pontificating, drinking a scotch, and making great thoughts. Some of us are just going out, having fun, and enjoying what we love to do.
Well, kudos to you. That's not an easy task. I know working in that industry, the service industry, especially in restaurants and the bar scene and stuff, that had to be a difficult place for you to work as well, being surrounded by it all the time.
Thank you, but not really. It was like a light switch. I mean, I just knew that I was homeless. I was living on the streets in Grand Rapids, and honestly, I had the clothes that I had on my back and some clothes in my backpack, and I still kept a job. I had a lot of support from the people that I worked with at the restaurant at the time. I checked myself in, did all my stuff, and I never turned back, and I never regretted it, and I try to help out other people who are struggling with addiction, and that's the only reason why I bring it up, because I just got off the phone with somebody else not too long ago who's having troubles out west, and another guy in state, another guy I work with who's having other issues, and it's real. It's around us every day, and it deteriorates families and it breaks up homes, and it's sad.
Wow. I really appreciate you sharing that. Have you seen other people affected by fly fishing in the same way that they've been able to replace addictions or been able to cope with life through fly fishing?
A lot. No, literally. I mean, seriously, you would be amazed at whether it's a life-changing event, whether it's a physical changing, you've got to do something different with your life, or you make a career change and you decide to get out of, how many stories you hear. The guy said, I was doing the Wall Street thing, wearing a suit and tie, and you know what? I gave that life up, and I'm a guide, or I tie flies commercially, or I do this, and I couldn't be happier.
Mm-hmm.
It's out there, and it's kind of the reason why we do what we do, because if you can be happy if you can make money and be happy doing what you like to do, then by all means,
do what you love. No one said it better than our first episode with Captain Joe DeMalderis, how he told us his story about how he became a guide, how his wife supported him, how his mom supported him, and how his dad thought he should go see a shrink. He chased his dream. That's what we're all about here. We're about chasing your dream, finding that peace, that fulfillment in your life through fly fishing or through pursuing your dreams. So let's check out Joe. This was episode 01, King of the Upper Delaware, Captain Joe DeMalderis.
I got into this business because I've been fishing since I was 3 years old, and started fly fishing. I was probably 11 or 12, and immediately got bit. Started tying flies a little later. I was probably late teens, maybe early 20s, 20, 21. I got real serious about tying flies, and then had a real job, and because I thought that's what you're supposed to do, and did that for a few years until I was, in my mid-30s, and hated every minute of it, but did it anyway. And then one day I just decided I'm going fishing, and that's it. I'm not doing anything else. I'm going fishing. My wife is extremely supportive, which was a huge plus. And actually, my mother was too. She just said to me, ever since you were a little boy, I always figured somehow you could figure out how you could make a living going fishing every day. And my father thought I should go see a shrink. So it was, but I have no regrets. Just something I just love doing. I never set an alarm clock anymore. I just get up naturally every morning when the sun comes up, and nothing else I'd rather be doing. So I kind of feel like I retired 25 years ago. The thing for me was I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to be a fishing guide from a very young age, actually. But I just thought, no, you can't do that. People don't do that. You got to get a real job. You got to go, follow the so-called American dream kind of thing, and that's what you have to do. And at some point, I don't know really what it was, just said to me that, you just got to do what you got to do. It's kind of like a Billy Joel song almost. You just, it's it's your life, So make it into something.
I can't tell you guys how nervous I was when I first interviewed Joe DeMaldaris. I mean, he was our first episode. He wasn't our first interview, but he was our very first episode that we published. And it's funny when you listen back, you can hear the quality of the audio get a little bit better as we move forward. But man, I appreciate Joe and all he's done for our show and the people he's sent our way. Thank you so much. Art is such a big part of fly fishing. The next 3 clips are from 3 awesome artists. We've got Paul Puckett, Bob White, who was like on episode number 3, and A.D. Maddox. And you know what I noticed about is what some of the things that Bob White and A.D. Maddox said is they don't do it for the fame. They don't join competitions, but all 3 of these artists do it because it's what they love to do, and that's what makes them so great. So let's take a listen to Paul Puckett first. Yeah, well, what do you think it is about fly fishing and wing shooting that attracts artists?
I think because, and I've wondered the same thing too, and I don't think I've ever pinpointed the right answer, but I think some of my best memories with whether it's my dad or granddads or friends are when I've been out fishing mainly. I'm not a huge hunter, but I've done, a little bit of it. I love, going out with sporting dogs and quail and all that stuff. But some of my best memories are either while we're fishing or hunting or the 2 or 3 hours after that talking about it. So I think when you see a painting that reminds you of that, I think you instantly want it, or you instantly think about it, or you get the print. I think it's because those pieces of art bring back that memory that you had. Like a good song. A good song instantly takes you back. I think sporting art does the same exact thing to that person that loves, whether it's that fishing or that place or whatever. So I get people that want commission paintings of a photo where they and their dad were catching a tarpon that day, or a guy and his brother or sister or whatever from that place. It's just they wanted to get taken back to that memory.
That's awesome. Let's take a listen to Bob White's clip.
I really, to be quite honest with you, just do what I do, and I don't really pay attention too much to what the industry thinks or says. But it's nice to know that it's nice to know that that the industry thinks highly of my art. I paint and I draw and I paint and I draw what I love, and it just seems that that work gets published to illustrate stories or columns or book covers or magazine covers. So by hook or crook, we kind of put it all together and make it work.
And here we have A.D. Maddox, and you'll hear. I mean, Paul Puckett, Bob White, and A.D. Maddox. They're not competitors. They're just true to their craft. They don't care what anyone else thinks. They're just going to do what they feel that they need to do. Let's check out A.D.
I don't do artistic competition because I don't like to put myself in a position where somebody's going to evaluate my artwork.
I really think that attitude is why all 3 of those artists are infamous. As most of you know, I'm a musician, and being an artist, yeah, it's this thing like you want to please people, but you also have to do what you were born to do, and that's what makes a great artist, whether it's music or the art, the painting, or whatever it is. It's that being true to yourself that creates great art. Now, there's a few episodes, one in particular that stands out, and it's with Curtis Fleming, and he offers some advice, and I pulled a little clip from his episode offering some advice on listen to your guide.
Listen to your guide. Listen to your guide. And I had a country music songwriter of the year for 3 years with us, and and I watched this guide, and he was telling me as we were floating down the Deschutes River, he said, I've noticed something about you, Curtis. And he said, you may want to work on this. And I said, what's that? And he said, you're a manic fly fisherman. And I was like, well, why am I a manic fly fisherman? He's like, dude, when you catch a fish, you flip backwards. You go, words come out of your mouth that I know your people's going to have to edit, and you flip out. But when you're not catching fish, I'm worried that you're going to jump out the boat and try to drown yourself. So, and after looking back at the tape, I was thinking, wow, I got this wrong. Because when it comes down to it, everybody says you make a 30-minute show. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, we went to Brazil and we shot 16 hours of footage that we had to get down to, by the time you do commercials, that we had to edit down to 21 minutes and 30 seconds.
My word.
So, a lesson learned from the guide. The second lesson, the country music songwriter thought he knew everything about fly fishing and wouldn't listen to his guide. And I listened to everything my guide said, and I watched the guide walk away from the country music songwriter and said, so you don't want to listen to your guide today. And that day I had a 30-plus fish in the boat, and the songwriter didn't catch a fish.
Wow.
So for all those hardworking guides out there that pays their dues and that learns their waters and learns the bugs, when I go there, I'm an open book. Teach me, give it to me. I'll take everything you can give me.
Has that been your approach in everything in life?
Really is.
That was a really fun interview, and it's kind of funny because you guys don't hear a lot. I mean, by the time we interview someone, it goes through an editing process, and we cut stuff out, we add stuff in, music and intros and things like that. Well, with Curtis, I think Curtis and I were probably on the horn for well over an hour. So on that episode, you hear like 30 or 40 minutes of it, but we're very much kindred spirits, and I had a great time talking to him and just hearing him out. Even after we turned the tape off, just talking to him and hearing his heart about what he's doing and why he's doing, the Fly Rod Chronicles. It was a great episode. I encourage you to go back and check out the whole thing. The next clip I took from Brad Beefus' episode. He is the president over at Scientific Anglers, and we talk a little bit about why he fly fishes and how he got into that. He was very gracious and an awesome guest. Let's check it out. Why do you think that you were, as a kid, you had mentioned you got into fly tying? It really, brought you in to fly fishing. Could you tell us why you think you were so attracted and just kind of sucked in to the art of fly fishing?
Yeah, I think that, that probably the two biggest things for me, I mentioned earlier that creative side of fly tying and being able to make your own fly, your own lure, versus, younger years growing up, it was a Daredevil or a Rooster Tail or a Mep Spinner or, something that you bought in the store and came out of a package. And the idea of actually building something on a hook that you could take out and pull a fish and catch a fish, even over and above the artistic side of the fly tying. That was one of the things that, even today still sticks out in my mind. I love tying flies. I love sitting down. It's just, it's one of my decompression things. If I can't fish or in the winter months, just to be able to sit down and create at the vise is one of the things that I love about this sport. And I think the other piece of it is, the casting aspect. I think there's something mesmerizing about watching someone fly cast and just that interaction between the fly line and the rod. It's so much more intimate when you do hook a fish and you've got the fly line in your hands, and that, that's that direct connection right to the fish. And you sort of have that with conventional fishing, but I think there's kind of another level of that when you are fly fishing. It's a much more hands-on aspect of fishing. And I think that, the other thing that kind of goes along with it, and I would say probably now that I have 4 children that love to fly fish and be in the outdoors and participate in the sport, is just the aspect of learning every time you go. I think that's fishing in general, but certainly with fly fishing, every time you go, if you have an open mind, you're going to learn new things. You're never going to know it all. And the people associated within the sport, it's a really great group of people. There's a certain level of camaraderie when you're on the water, and I think there is in all fishing and hunting and outdoor related activities. But fly fishing is a small enough industry and marketplace that I think it's pretty easy to get to know a lot of people in different facets of it, and it's that relationship side of kind of having that extended fly fishing family out there is something that I've always enjoyed as well.
That's some great feedback from Brad. Brad, thank you so much. Thank you for spending some time with Remote No Pressure. Now, we're not all super serious all the time, and sometimes we like to have a good time and have some good stories. And I really don't know where this question came from, but we had Meredith McCord on the show, and I asked her a really crazy question. I really don't know where it came from, but I thought it was really funny, and you can just hear how she just loosens up and it was a riot. Hold on one second. Let's take a listen. But what was the first VHS tape you ever rented? Do you remember that? I'm totally kidding. It's not really that big of a deal.
You know what? I think I can tell you what it was, because I couldn't. We weren't allowed to rent them, but my dad was addicted to the Home Shopping Network, and he loved buying things off the TV. It was one of his stress relievers while we weren't allowed to watch TV. Apparently, Mom would say at like 2 or 3 in the morning when Dad couldn't sleep, he'd turn on the Home Shopping Network or the equivalent in those days and would buy something. And so we often had a ton of like 5 hours of bebop music from Motown music. He was always that guy that bought those cassette tapes and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But he also bought a whole run of movies. They must have sold these VHS movies. And so we had it's super random, but my dad loved musicals.
Oh,
so
wow.
And I'm telling you, normal guy, he just is a product of his, of the 50s. But so he must have bought a box set or something, My Fair Lady, Sound of Music, that whole genre. So Mary Poppins. So growing up, that was when I think of what movies did we watch growing up, that's what we watched. Very PG, very PG. Now, I do remember Dad bought Top Gun.
Oh.
And we all started watching it and realized real quickly that we shouldn't be watching it because there was some bad language and there might have been some people doing something in the bedroom. So those are my memories of VHS.
Oh, VHS. I was thinking that the other day. I almost put that question out on Twitter. Like, what was your first VHS tape? And I know it has nothing to do with fly fishing, but our first VHS tape, we went to Brookshire Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with that chain.
Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely.
So we used to be able to rent VHS tapes there. So my dad bought this VCR, and it was gigantic. It was like the size of our actual TV, And so he hauls us down there, and we get Where the Red Fern Grows and Old Yeller were the 2 videos.
Oh my gosh, were y'all just bawling, crying the entire time?
Oh my gosh. We didn't even know what was going to happen in Old Yeller till the end. I'll never forget, permanently scarred, from that movie. But both of those they just rip your heart right out of you. But
I still to this day cannot watch any dog movies just because they make me too sad. Even the animated ones make me too sad.
That was a awesome episode. That was so much fun. What a great guest. One of the things that's behind the scenes is our search engine optimization on our website, and we're looking for keywords and different things like that. And this particular episode is entitled Adam Cronenberger's Secret Sauce. And so for some reason, we get tons of traffic for people looking for some secret sauce. And I can just imagine how disappointed they are because it's not a secret sauce that you eat, but it's Adam's secret sauce for fly fishing. So that's the name of the episode. And what I did is Adam had a great story about fly fishing and some of the shenanigans that went on. And so I clipped that from the episode, and it's a riot. Thank you so much, Adam.
What is the memory from fishing that you have that you'll always have? What's one of your most memorable moments fly fishing?
And I'll talk about my two buddies again. So we decided to get together and do a trip around Gunnison, Colorado. So we were going to go fishing around Gunnison. None of us had ever done it. Hardly spent any time there. It was just, we're kind of like front range guys, but we were like, let's get over there and see what's going on. So we all show up and we go into a fly shop and we're like, so where do we go fish? What do we do? He's like, oh, you can go here, here, and here. And then I asked kind of like the stupid question, but it's like what I'm always kind of a little bit hungry for at times. I said, okay, now out of curiosity, if we wanted to get some big fish, or where is the best fishing, like the craziest extreme, where would you send us for that trip? Just out of curiosity. And he goes, well, if you go hike into the Black Canyon, it's a little bit of a trek, but if you hike down in there, I don't know what kind of gear you guys got, but hike down in there, quite a trek, pretty hot, but down there, you're going to find fish in the Black Canyon that are just like dream fish. Wow. And that sold me. I was like, that's it, guys, let's go see what we got. Let's do it. And we were planning on like car camping, right? So we had like duffel bags and we had some backpacks. And I was like, we're not going to do like a week-long trip or anything into the Black Canyon because we already don't have the stuff for that. But like, let's go do a night or two down there.
Right.
And so I talked him into it somehow. And we didn't have any equipment, in all honesty, looking at it in hindsight. But we all bought a gallon of water, and we I think one of the guys was carrying a pillow in there. None of us had a real backpack. I mean, it was like it was a little bit crazy. So we started going down, and then we just let it all kind of loose, and we're like, you know what? Let's just strip and get naked. This is so freeing. Let's just do it. And let's just hike down this thing. And so we did it and we started going down and we're like, all right, it's having like a wild time. Like, where else do you do this? And then it was like, all right, this isn't funny anymore because we're like out of water here, like a gallon of water in. I mean, it was like a 9-mile trek down the canyon. And so sure enough, we blew through all of our water. We didn't have filters. We didn't have iodine. We didn't have anything. But luckily, some rafters came down, and they were staying the night. They filled us up. And so we were good to go there. We get into our tent. I think it was my brother. He was like, oh, guys, I got a surprise for you. And so we're like, what is it? Like, we're deadbeat tired. I think we hardly even fished that night. We were so tired and worn out. But he pulled out of his pillow sack 3 beers, and we're like, where did you hike those? You got those in there for us? Like, of all the things we need, that's what you bring in here. So it's just like, it kind of sealed it for us, and we got into some fishing the next day, and that was fun and hiked out, but it was like, it just wasn't planned, and we just went for it, and we did things that we wouldn't normally do, and we acted a little ridiculous, but that was a memorable trip.
Now, yeah, that's a great trip. What kind of beer was it?
Gosh, I don't know. Back then, I'm scared to know what it was.
Yeah, beer has evolved quite a bit over the last
20
years.
It was a good chance it was a PBR.
Oh, wow. Hey, at that moment, you're probably so happy. It didn't matter what it was.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story.
All right. Well, this next episode, or this next clip is from Rabbi Eric Eisenkramer. And, I really didn't know much about Judaism before I spoke with Rabbi Eric, but he's going to talk to us. He has a book out about how fly fishing is a spiritual experience. And I had to talk to the guy. So I reached out to him, and he so graciously came on our podcast. And he talks a little bit here about how fly fishing is kind of like a Sabbath, which is actually recognized in both Christianity and Judaism. So let's have a listen to the rabbi.
The concept of the Sabbath, which of course is prevalent in both Judaism and Christianity, the day of rest is very important. In Judaism, we celebrate the Sabbath from Friday evening to Saturday evening, and in Christianity, it's celebrated on Sunday. And the Sabbath is meant to be a day of rest, a day of separation from the regular world, a day to recharge. So I actually feel I have, very often, I have two Sabbaths. I have the Sabbath in my congregation where I'm leading services and being with my congregation and praying. And then I have my Sabbath when I'm on the fly on the river. And that is on Thursdays, which is my day off from the temple. So when I leave my home and drive out to the river on those Thursdays, and I spend some time listening to the radio and decompressing a bit, and you get out to the river and you set up your gear and walk out to the stream, and then you get on the water. And to me, this is actually one of the most important things about fly fishing is I turn off my cell phone. No beeps, no text messages, no emails, just me and the water and the fish and nature. And you just soak it in, the entire experience. And maybe you're fortunate. And maybe I'm fortunate I'm able to catch a trout and hold this beautiful creature in my hand and look at it and release it back to its home. And at the end of a day of fishing, whether I've caught a number of fish or I've caught 0 fish, I feel a sense of contentment.
Man, what a great episode, and what an awesome guest. Phenomenal insight that he had on life and on fly fishing. And again, we talked for a while after the episode, and just such a great guy. It was just awesome. Our next clip, and we got 2 more clips. So our next clip is from none other than Oliver White, and he's going to talk a little bit about fly fishing. And one of the things that impressed me about Oliver White is the level of humility that he has. Just truly a good person. And this clip is great, and he talks a little bit about where he's at and how rich he is, not just in terms of money, but in life.
I look at where I am now, and I'm incredibly wealthy in a lot of ways that are not financial. And one of the greatest things, honestly, as I think about all of it, right? I mean, I have a lot of doubt, and I have a lot of existential doubt often, right? I mean, it happens, generally at least once or twice a year as I severely doubt, the path I'm on in life, and part of that is the luxury of opportunity in that I can do what I do now, but I can also go and do other more lucrative type careers, and often I'm turning those opportunities down still today. There's a real thought process there for me on what's important in the world. And unfortunately, dollars are easy to keep track of, and that's a very easy thing for people. And I think one of the problems in New York is it's the only thing that people really use to value what they're doing. And it's a lot harder to place a value on what the experience is, what it means to do what I do and spend so much time in unusual places. And I find incredible value there, but it's not a measurable value. And so to try to balance that with still making a living and having a more traditional life all at the same time, is a real challenge for me, and continues to be. And ultimately, I always kind of come back to, if I had all the money in the world, right? I mean, if I had Bill Ackman's money, the guy that I used to work for, right? I'd be doing exactly what I do now. I'd sit in the front of the plane and probably, guide a little less and fish a little bit more. But ultimately, it's a great privilege, and feel very fortunate to be able to do what I do, especially at this stage in my life. I'm 37, at least for another week here. And, I've been around the world, and really going around the world on any given year, and, have all these incredible adventures and all these great friends. And I've had all these wonderful, crazy experiences. And, that makes me really wealthy in a lot of ways that you can't measure in dollars.
Thank you all very much for listening today. This last clip, we talked to the owner of TFO, Mr. Rick Pope. and we ask him about his life's greatest accomplishment. Let's check it out. Let me ask you this question. I mean, you're not a young kid just out of college. I mean, you have quite a successful career. You've done great for yourself. You know, let me ask you this: when you look back on your life, business-wise, family, anything that you have, what would you say has been your most what's been your best achievement or your proudest moment up to this point?
You know, there have been two. When I was in college, I shot competitively, primarily skeet, and those are highlight memories of my life. But they kind of pale by comparison of the people I've gotten to know in fly fishing. You know, to be able to interact with the Ed Jaworowskis and the Klausers and the Popovics, and you know, and to call these guys friends and treat them like you would high school buddies is, I kind of pinch myself every once in a while. Like, you know, holy shit, who would have thought that when I was a fledgling fly fisherman, that reading these guys' books and hearing stories about them and legends, and you know, you get to walk among giants. It's really been gratifying. And I don't think it matters what level of people you get to know in fly fishing. It's one of the neatest group of folks that you could ever endear yourself with or be around.
I could not agree. And there's a reason that we're ending on this particular part, because I could not agree with Rick anymore. I started this thing out. I didn't know anyone in the industry. No one. And we just began to interview people and just start talking to people, and then you find out who they really are. I mean, take all of our guests are just huge. They're giants in the industry, and here they are talking to us on the Remote No Pressure podcast, and it was just amazing, you know. And I just want to say a special thanks to everyone who listens week after week. It's amazing the thousands of people that we get downloading this podcast. Like Rick Pope has said, the greatest achievement of this podcast is the friends that we've all made along the way. From the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you for the first 50, and here we go on to the next 50. I'm so excited. Now, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, go to remotenopressure.com. I gave you the big news. Buy the bag. It's freaking amazing. You're gonna love it. And if you get one, if you get it fast enough, because we're only doing 100, if you get one, you're gonna own a piece of Remote No Pressure history. Thank you so much. I just want to thank every guest that we've had, and I know I don't have clips from every episode, because the episode would be like 5 hours long. But every episode, every single episode, every single person I've spoken with have been absolutely amazing, and I am so humbled as I sit here behind the microphone, and as Rick Pope says, so many times I feel like I'm walking amongst the giants. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, go fishing.